Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're breaking down a developing story from Spain's Canary Islands, where a recent surge in migrant arrivals has just shattered weeks of relative calm. Our top story tonight, a period of quiet that lasted for nearly 3 weeks on one of the world's most dangerous migration routes, has come to an abrupt end. A new wave of irregular migration has reached the Canary Islands, with well over 300 people arriving in the span of a single weekend. This sudden influx has put the issue right back in the spotlight for both local and national authorities in Spain. For about 3 weeks, the waters around the archipelago were unusually quiet. There was a sense that enhanced interception efforts along the African coast were having a real impact, effectively reducing the number of boats attempting the dangerous crossing. But that period of calm, as we've now seen, was fragile, and it came to a sudden and very dramatic end this past weekend. So how exactly did this all unfold? The arrivals didn't happen all at once. Instead, they came in a rapid series of events that spanned from Saturday morning through Sunday night, involving multiple boats and 2 different islands. Let's walk through exactly how this weekend played out. As you can see from this timeline, the escalation was incredibly fast. It all began with a single, unassisted boat arrival on Saturday morning, but that was followed by 2 separate major incidents on Sunday that quickly grew into a large-scale emergency response involving Spanish rescue services. The first indication that the lull was over happened on Saturday. A wooden boat, a type known as a cayuco, was spotted. It was carrying 64 men, and it had managed to complete the entire treacherous journey on its own, arriving directly at the port of La Restinga on the island of El Hierro without needing any assistance from emergency services. And the sheer scale of this journey is just staggering. The boat had set sail from Nuadhibu in Mauritania. That's a voyage of 750 kilometers across the open, unpredictable Atlantic Ocean. It took them 4 days. And that ordeal took its toll. Even on this quote-unquote successful crossing, 2 of the passengers required immediate hospitalization upon arrival. And the group itself was incredibly diverse, which really reflects the complex migration patterns that converge on the West African coast. Initial reports indicate that the men came from at least 5 different nations: Mali, Senegal, Mauritania, Guinea, and the Gambia. It shows this is a route that draws people from a vast swath of the continent. After the events of Saturday, the situation really intensified on Sunday. The arrival of more boats in the waters around the Canaries prompted Spain's maritime rescue services to launch 2 separate and very significant emergency operations. The 2 operations on Sunday were quite different. The first involved locating a smaller boat with 21 people near the island of Gran Canaria. But the main focus and the largest operation was centered on a much bigger vessel near El Hierro. The interception of this boat, which was carrying 235 people, turned into a complex all-night rescue mission for the authorities. Now, if we take a closer look at that large group of 235 people, the demographic data is really telling. This wasn't just a boat of men. It consisted of 149 men, yes, but also 64 women and 22 minors. The significant presence of so many women and children really underscores the fact that it's not just individuals, but entire families undertaking this perilous journey. And all of these arrivals, they're more than just numbers on a chart. They represent hundreds of individual people who are undertaking what is widely considered one of the single most dangerous migration routes anywhere in the world. So let's take a moment to examine exactly what makes it so incredibly perilous. The journey itself is what makes this route so deadly. Migrants in often flimsy, overcrowded boats must cross hundreds of kilometers of the open Atlantic. They're battling powerful swirling currents and notoriously unpredictable weather that can change in an instant. The vessels are frequently, if not always, completely unfit for such harsh conditions, turning every single attempt into a roll of the dice. So to understand the full context here, we really need to pull the lens back and look at the data. How does this one weekend of arrivals fit into the broader picture of migration to Spain and, by extension, to the entire European Union? This right here is a crucial statistic. So far in 2024, Spain has ranked as the 2nd highest receiving country for asylum applications in the whole EU. The only country that has received more is Germany. This really highlights Spain's critical role as a primary gateway for migrants and asylum seekers trying to enter Europe. And official data from Spain's Interior Ministry highlights the increasing pressure on the country's reception systems. If you look at the full year of 2023, there were about 57,000 irregular arrivals recorded. This year, the total has already surpassed that number and is now approaching 64,000. However, here's where the data gets a bit more nuanced. Looking at it a different way, the UNHCR has tracked just over 25,000 arrivals to Spain so far this year. Now, while that is still a very significant number, this particular data set suggests that the total for the entire year could actually fall short of the previous year's high. It's possible this reflects the impact of recent interception agreements, even with surges like the one we just witnessed. But, focusing only on the arrival numbers, on who makes it, misses the most dramatic and frankly heartbreaking part of this story. And that is the immense, unimaginable loss of life that occurs out there at sea. A recent report from the NGO Caminando Fronteras paints a truly devastating picture of this human toll. The question it forces us to ask is, just how high is that cost? The number is just staggering. In only the first 6 months of this year, the NGO documented that at least 1,865 people died or disappeared while attempting to make the crossing to the Canary Islands. Let that sink in for a moment. That's an average of about 10 people per day, every day, for 6 months. And tragically, the scope of this loss includes the most vulnerable among us. Among those 1,865 people who perished were more than 300 children. Over 300 children who were on those boats. It's a figure that just underscores the extreme desperation that is driving entire families to risk absolutely everything on this route. Ultimately, the events of this past weekend are so much more than just a news headline. They serve as a powerful and stark reminder of the complex, persistent humanitarian challenge that is unfolding at Europe's southern border. A crisis defined by these perilous journeys, by desperate hopes, and by a tragic, unrelenting loss of life.